We are continuing our series of videos looking at each of the prophets mentioned in the Quran. And today we will look at the Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him. Before we begin, I would like to point out that we, Muslims, believe that Jesus, peace be upon him, is the same person as the Prophet Joshua, peace be upon him, as mentioned in the Old Testament. We also believe that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the same person as the Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, as mentioned in the New Testament. So when we talk about the Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him, we are talking about Prophet Joseph, son of Jacob, peace be upon him. And we have a long story, so grab a cup of tea or coffee, sit back and relax, and let's dive right into it. So Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him, is the son of Prophet Jacob, who is called Israel in the Bible. He was the favorite son of his father, because his father loved him more than all his other sons, and Jacob made for him a beautiful coat of many colors. The coat symbolized Jacob's love for Joseph, but this created jealousy among Joseph's brothers, so they sold him to some merchants who took him to Egypt. They tricked their father into thinking Joseph has been killed. So Jacob mourned for Joseph as if he was dead, saying, "I shall go down to the grave mourning for my son." But actually, Joseph was not dead. He was taken to Egypt. Later on, Joseph was presented to the Pharaoh as a slave, and because he was a very handsome young man, the Pharaoh kept him for himself. Joseph was then promoted from being a slave to being in charge of his household. Soon after, Joseph interpreted the Pharaoh's dream, which was about 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. So Joseph advised the Pharaoh to store food during the 7 years of plenty, so they can have enough food for the 7 years of famine. And Joseph became vizier, second only to the Pharaoh. After that, the time came for the 7 years of famine, and just as Joseph predicted, there was no food in the land of Egypt, and people started to go hungry. At this time, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to buy food, and they didn't know that Joseph was the one in charge of all the food in Egypt, and Joseph didn't recognize them either. So Joseph tested his brothers. He said that he forgives them for what they did to him, but he said that he wants something from them before he reveals his identity to them. He wanted them to bring their youngest brother to him. So his brothers returned home. When they told their father Jacob that they need to take the youngest son, Benjamin, with them to Egypt. Jacob was very sad because he was afraid that something bad will happen to him like what happened to his other son, Joseph. But Jacob's wife, Rachel, who was Joseph's mother, said that she doesn't care anymore. She said, "Am I still in Jacob's good graces? Am I still beloved by him? So Rachel said, if anything happens to Benjamin, I'm not going to care anymore." So they took Benjamin with them and went to Egypt. And when they got to Egypt, Joseph welcomed them and treated them like kings. But Joseph continued testing them, and this time he said that they cannot leave Egypt unless one of them stays behind as a hostage. His brothers agreed, and they chose Benjamin. But later on, when Joseph really wanted to reveal his identity to his brothers, he had a big feast and invited them, and he said to his servants, "Fill their sacks with food and put their money back into their sacks, and put my goblet, my cup, in the sack of the youngest one." Then he said, "Come on, let's get ready and let's go and meet with the king." Then Joseph's servants carried out his plan, and they filled the sacks, and they put the money back into their sacks. Then they put the cup in Benjamin's sack. So when they left, Joseph's servants ran after them and shouted, "Hey, you guys, come back here. You have stolen the cup." So they came back and they said, "We swear by the Lord your God and the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we swear that we didn't steal any cup." So Joseph's servants kept insisting, said only the one whose cup it is will stay in prison. And when they opened Benjamin's sack, they found the cup. So all of Joseph's brothers felt guilty because they knew that they were the ones who put the cup there, except for Benjamin. He was innocent. So they sighed. "What shall we do with this?" They said to each other. "Benjamin must stay here, and the rest of us will become slaves to the Egyptian vizier." So when they presented Benjamin to Joseph, Joseph started crying and said, "This is my brother. It is forbidden for us to do anything to him." So Joseph revealed to his brothers that he is their brother Joseph, whom they sold to those merchants. So Joseph forgave his brothers for what they did to him. He told them that God elevated him to be the second most powerful man in Egypt, so that he could save the lives of many people from death, from starving to death. Joseph also explained to his brothers how their actions, even though they meant harm to him, they were actually used by God for good. And after that, they all lived together, happily ever after. So we see from this story how God says in the Quran, and we know that Joseph's brothers intended evil against him, but their evil deeds did not harm him at all. Rather, it was their own selves that they harmed, as they realize, without knowing it, that their evil deeds were actually good deeds. Now, before we continue, if you want to learn more about Islam, click on the link in the description below. So Joseph, peace be upon him, saved not only his family, but all the people in Egypt and even other countries from starving to death. And we also see how his brothers, although they meant harm to him, they actually benefited themselves and all the people around them. This is what we call, in Arabic, manash, meaning benefit. This is the goodness that happens to the people even without them knowing it. And this is what God does in the lives of all believers. For example, when a believer leaves sin, he thinks he is missing out on fun and enjoyment. But actually he has gained something much better and greater that is beneficial for his heart, his soul, and his life in this world. Or, for example, when we give charity, we think that we are only giving away some money. But actually we are gaining something much better, which is pleasing God and getting a reward from God. And these rewards are even greater in the hereafter. Another lesson we learn from the story of Prophet Joseph is to always remain righteous and close to God, no matter where you are and no matter what position you may be in, whether you are a slave or a prisoner or in a position of power. Joseph, peace be upon him, remained righteous throughout his trials. He prayed, he worshipped God, and he trusted in God, even when he was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. So, Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him, is a prophet and a leader and a role model for all Muslims in all times. We seek refuge in God from Satan